Okay, we're on.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Judy Arnold, and we're going to call the meeting of May 22nd of TAM to order. And let us do a roll call right now to see who's here.
Okay. All right. Chair Arnold.
Here.
Commissioner Campbell.
Here.
Commissioner Carmel.
Here.
Commissioner Cleveland Knowles.
Here.
Commissioner Colbert.
Here.
Commissioner Collin.
Here.
Commissioner Connolly.
Here.
Commissioner Fredericks.
Here.
Commissioner Hilmer. Commissioner Kuhl.
Here.
Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Lucan.
Here.
Commissioner Reed. Commissioner Rice.
Here.
Commissioner Rodoni.
Here.
Commissioner Spears. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay. So I want to thank everyone for coming, and as we continue to shelter in place as allowed by Governor Newsom, we are meeting physically, and this meeting is being held via Zoom. I want to thank my fellow commissioners. I want to thank our Executive Director, Ann Richmond, and her staff for their attendance by either video or phone. And I also want to thank the members of the public who have tuned in to look at this meeting. In order to ensure, we've done that, never mind. Announcements on public comment and muting microphones. We take very seriously the fact that we should let the public be in on this meeting and participate in this meeting. And you are invited to do so by sending an email to info@tam.ca.gov. If your comment is received before the item is heard, it will be read when specific agenda item is being considered. If it is received during the meeting but after an item is heard, it will not be read, but will become part of the agenda. Before we go on, I want to ask the commissioners and staff to mute their microphones, and if possible for the duration of this meeting, only when you're speaking would you turn them on. This will help to minimize the feedback and the background noise. So please keep that in mind. Usually our Executive Director issues an oath of office to commissioners who are new to TAM. But since my chair's report, including an action item, I'm going to ask Executive Director Richmond to take care of this administrative task right now and to swear in our newest commissioner, Charles Lee from Corte Madera.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much, Chair Arnold. So Commissioner Lee, welcome. And if you would repeat after me, I will administer the oath of office, and that will enable you to vote on matters on today's agenda. All set? All right. I, Charles Lee, solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
The Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
that I will and faithfully discharge the duties
discharge the duty
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you, welcome. The next item on the agenda is the chair's report. I do not have a report, but I want to say that if board members have questions, when we open the item to public comment and close the item, request a motion and a second and ask Denise to call the roll call so that we can keep everything hunky-dory, okay? All right, for the rest of the meeting, the staff have a presentation.
So Chair Arnold, for the action item under the chair's report, this is an appointment to the TAM Executive Committee, and the recommendation from the chair is that the board approve the chair's recommendation to appoint Commissioner Susan Cleveland Knowles, representing the city of Sausalito, to fill a vacancy on the TAM Funding Programs and Legislation Executive Committee.
Let's do it.
Okay, we need a motion, I believe.
Can someone make a motion to
I'll
add?
move.
Second.
Great. Although, I'm good, yes. Here we go.
Okay, here we go. Commissioner Campbell. Commissioner Campbell?
Is that a yes?
Commissioner Campbell, can you unmute yourself, please? How do you vote, sir?
Yes, I'm sorry if you didn't hear me.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Carmel?
Yes.
Commissioner Cleveland Knowles?
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert?
Yes.
Commissioner Collin?
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly?
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks?
Yes.
Commissioner Cool?
Yes.
Commissioner Lee?
Yes.
Commissioner Lucan?
Yep.
Commissioner Rice?
Yes.
Commissioner Rodoni?
Aye.
Commissioner Sears?
Yes.
And Chair Arnold?
Yes.
The vote is unanimous, motion carries.
Great. Motion carries, and welcome to the Executive Committee. All right, the next item on the agenda is to have public comment, and I want to open it up to the public right now. And remember that your comments are actually about 300 words or 3 minutes. And staff will read any comments that have been received. Do we have any comments received?
We do, Madam Chair.
Okay, would you read them?
Actually, she did not send the text, she just said she'd like to make a statement during open period. Perhaps,
How could she do that?
she did not send the text, so unfortunately, until she sends it, we will not be able to, we won't be able to read her comment.
We're not able to read the comment. If you could send a text of your message, we'll be happy to do it. Do you know who that was?
Yes, it was Terrell Colloway from MCBC.
Great, Gerald Culloway from MCBC. Okay. We'll be looking for your wording, please. Thank you. Okay.
Should we go back to item,
Like the Executive Director's report?
well, item 2, Commissioner Matters, or if there are none, I can proceed with the Director's report.
Do we have any commissioner matters? I don't see any hands. Do you?
I do not. Oh, is that Commissioner Sears? Commissioner Rice?
Right? Is,
Yes, not.
She's
No.
shaking her head.
okay, all right.
Madam Chair, we did just receive the comment for,
All right, we,
time.
okay, we just received the comment from, yeah, so we're gonna read that to you now.
Okay, this is, she says, good evening. This is Terrell Colloway, the Executive Director for Marin County Bicycle Coalition and Sir Francis Drake High School Class of '87. She says, we commend all of the towns in Marin who are exploring alternative street usage to accommodate dining and shopping al fresco. MCBC wants to be of assistance in this effort to re-envision our streets for people, and we offer our assistance in any way we can. But we are very eager to make sure that our county doesn't lose sight of the fact that as we remove parking and transit is seen as unsafe, we will need safer routes to get to the downtown cores by foot or bike, routes that are safe for families with kids and their grandparents. Cities and towns across the world have realized the necessity to make more space for people to recreate and get where they need to go, removing through car access to many neighborhoods while saving access for residents, deliveries, and of course, emergency vehicles. In the Bay Area, 6 of the 9 counties, including many towns of similar size to ours, have chosen to use this opportunity to create easy wins for health. Unfortunately, there are no plans for this in Marin. I'm here to ask, if not now, when? We realize that Marin streets are a challenge. We are not built on a grid like Oakland or other cities. But if towns all over Europe and South America, towns of equal size to our small towns, with all kinds of squirrely streets have done this, so can we. In fact, all of you have at your disposal bicycle master plans both at the town and county levels. The ideas are vetted and right there for the taking. I urge each of you to read the National Association of City Transportation Officials, NACDO, recently released Streets for Pandemic Relief and Recovery. I've entered into the record with this statement. It gives excellent ideas for street configuration, all which can be done at nominal cost. I urge each of you to dust off your bicycle master plans and see what can be implemented fast, cheap, and easy. These next few months can be the most innovative of our lifetime if we don't let this opportunity pass us by. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. And that's all. No one else has said.
That is the same thing, and I believe, one moment, please.
Okay.
I think we did receive another one, but that is for a later item. So that's it, Chair.
Great. Thank you. All right. All right. Next, I want to ask if there are any commissioner matters tonight. Raise your hand. Don't see any commissioner matters. Okay. All right, Executive Director's report.
All right, thank you very much, Chair Arnold. So the report was sent out to all of the board members, and we have also a PowerPoint version of it that I'll be running through tonight just for some visuals. And I would like to start today with some photos that we have had taken over the last couple of months of transportation sites around the county during the shelter in place. And I think they do an excellent job of capturing this moment in time, of showing the impact to transit and to traffic and to all modes, and also to show how the county has been complying with the shelter in place. So just quickly run through these photos of our county.
Okay.
And we can post those to our website so that you can peruse them again if you like. Moving on, TAM staff continue to work mostly remotely. However, there have been news reports that Marin may allow offices to reopen soon, and we're preparing plans for how to do that on a limited or rotating basis once it's allowed. Additionally, I have been participating in the Transportation Industry Advisory Group to Marin Recovers to provide input on that effort. Next slide, please. Moving on to project updates. Many of you are aware that the county recently awarded the contract to perform rehabilitation and improvements along Sir Francis Drake Boulevard between Highway 101 and the town of Ross, about 2.2 miles for a cost of $18 million. TAM provided over $14 million of Measure A sales tax funds for this work, and we're excited that construction is expected to start in June. Next slide, please. I'm also pleased to report continued progress on the North-South Greenway segment over the Corte Madera Creek. Caltrans is now compiling bid documents and expects to send this project out to bid in June and open bids in July, and we're hopeful that construction will start in the fall. Next slide. More project activity. Construction is actually underway to create this barrier-separated bike path on the Sir Francis Drake flyover near the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge. This project is a partnership with BATA, Caltrans, and the City of San Rafael, and TAM provided about $1.3 million for construction of this barrier. The construction is expected to continue for a couple of months and be complete later this summer. And these pictures, I think, were taken yesterday, so they're pretty timely and pretty indicative of the progress to date. Next slide, please. Also nearby, for the 101-580 Direct Connector project development, we're planning to hold 2 stakeholder working group meetings this summer to provide updates and to seek input. The dates are being developed for late June and early July, and we'll keep you apprised once the dates are confirmed. I mentioned the Safe Routes to Schools program briefly last month, but I would now like to add that the TAM website is actually hosting links and updates on many of these activities and program features that are being developed for the shelter-in-place period. The team continues to work on and to offer remote learning materials and activities for schools, kids, and families during this time. Turning next to partner news, we wanted to note that the City of San Rafael is considering nominating 2 additional priority development areas, one in North San Rafael and one in Southeast San Rafael, the Canal neighborhood. The city is seeking public input, and they asked us to send out this information to our list, so we wanted to make all of you aware of it as well. Also locally, the county completed installation of 22 more electric vehicle charging heads at the Los Gamos campus, and TAM provided $60,000 in rebates for this project. TAM also contributed to Novato's recent purchase of 2 more e-bikes for their police force to add to their prior e-bike purchase. Turning now to the roads, seems like a long time ago, but just about a month ago, BATA suspended weekday congestion tolling on the Bay Bridge. The suspension was said to be indefinite at that time. Traffic on the bridge has fallen by about 50% since the shelter-in-place order began, though it is starting to tick back up recently. Next slide, please. Finally, ending my report on an upbeat note, MTC yesterday approved the MSN B7 segment as a regional priority for the SB1 Congested Corridor Program. With that action, the project will be jointly nominated by both MTC and Caltrans. We included nice support letters from Senator Mike McGuire and from Chair Arnold and Commissioner Connolly as attachments to the EDR. Applications for the SB1 competitive program are due in July, and awards will be announced in December. This is a very exciting milestone for the project. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great report. Any questions from the board? I don't see any. Okay, all right. So we're going to go to, thank you very much. That was great seeing all that. Let's go to commissioner reports, and the first one is the MTC report from Commissioner Connolly.
Good evening, everyone, and hopefully many of you saw my letter report to the Marin Council of Mayors and Council members last night, but I will summarize that real quickly. And top of the fold is the announcement that Ann just made concerning SB1 and the Congested Corridors program. That truly is great news. Quick update on transit funding through the Federal CARES Act. As you recall, the first tranche of the Bay Area portion of the money was distributed recently, and the second tranche will be distributed per the recommendations of a blue ribbon task force that has been appointed by MTC. My feedback, and actually it's very good that Nancy Whelan, our Marin Transit General Manager, is on that task force. But my feedback at the MTC meeting yesterday was to reemphasize the fact that the federal government really is looking for this money to be distributed in an expeditious manner. It's COVID related. It recognizes that many of our transit agencies are now virtually on their backs because of the impact of the crisis, so that we do not have time to delay. So I think the message is there. The funding, and we'll be looking at immediate issues like safety on transit systems and lost revenues, operational needs. The money will be distributed, I'm told, by July 22nd. Beyond that, this task force will engage in some longer range strategic issues around the future of Bay Area transit, if you will, particularly in the new environment that we know we will be in. And issues that have been around for a while. Should there be consolidation, for example, of certain agencies? Looking at seamless travel, serving core riders and underserved communities and the like. So we're looking for the right balance between, yes, let's tackle those issues, but also let's get the mandate achieved of getting that CARES Act funding second tranche out. So more to come on that. AB 1487 and the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority. A decision was also made yesterday at the MTC meeting not to go forward with a ballot measure for regional affordable housing this November. And that mirrors a decision that was also recently made by ABAG along the same lines. So the remaining question was, should the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority go forward in any event? And what a number of us had asked at the prior MTC meeting is, what's the value add proposition, right? We don't want simply a new regional bureaucracy. How would this further the objectives of localities in pursuing funding and the like? So I thought MTC staff did a very solid job in making the case that it is a value add proposition. So what they want to do, though, is further analysis around specific funding sources, because MTC, like all of us, is going to be in a very tight budget environment going forward. So assuming that some sort of funding stream can be identified around the June timeframe or thereafter, a further decision will be made to what's called stand up, BAFA, the new acronym for this agency, and then going forward to carefully make sure that it is a resource rather than competing with local jurisdictions as we move forward with housing strategies. Again, I think that message is understood, and so Supervisor or Commissioner Rodoni may have something to add as our ABAG rep, but I think that is at least moving in a constructive direction at this point. So that's it.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to go to Supervisor Rodoni or Commissioner Rodoni for the Marin Transit report. Anything you might want to add to the to Commissioner Connolly's report?
Sure. First, I'll work on the Marin Transit report from our meeting May 4th. Marin Transit, as we referred to earlier, received $5.4 million in the federal CARES Act funding this month. And this award will keep the frontline transit workers providing essential services and avoid layoffs as intended by Congress. As Commissioner Connolly mentioned, the MTC will be allocating a second round of CARES Act funds to transit operators no later than July of this year, obviously. If the same or similar formula is used, Marin Transit could receive an additional $3.5 million, which certainly would be appreciated. Transit ridership has experienced, as you would guess, a drop of 80% in ridership, its lowest level over the past 9 weeks. Normally about 10,000 riders use the system every day, but with the pandemic, that's been down to 1,900 riders, which were traveling on Marin Transit daily in April. Since then, we've been seeing a slow but steady increase in ridership. Currently, the ridership is down, is about 70 to 75% of what is typically expected in May. So there's been a little rebound, but it's a very, very little amount. I wanted to also report Marin Transit was able to expedite the purchase of replacement buses and shuttles, resulting in a savings of more than $230,000 by placing the order before a joint purchasing agreement expired. The vehicles were purchased at a lower price and are more reliable and durable than the newer models. So we're pleased to be able to do that quickly in the last month. The Measure AA and Measure A capital funds were used to match the federal funds to purchase this vehicle. And as Congressman, not Congressman, Commissioner Connolly referred to, ABAG did make the same decisions that MTC did related to the potential bond measure in November. We actually don't have a place in the BAFA discussion because that was by legislation given solely to MTC to make that decision. But we are certainly curious about how that will work and how that will function and what it means to especially our smaller local counties. So we'll stay tuned to that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Lucan on the SMART report.
Thank you, Chair Arnold. A couple things to report from SMART. Like every transit agency, at SMART, we're trying to figure out how do we provide the best level of service given the current situation that we're facing, specifically from a budgetary standpoint. We didn't want to make any decisions about reduction in service in a vacuum, so we engaged the public as much as we can. And very pleased to report at our last SMART board meeting, we had conducted a survey about some potential service reductions, and we got about 3,200 people responded to the survey we put out, which is higher than our average daily ridership pre-COVID. We were able to get some really good feedback. We were looking at a service reduction that would have brought us to 22 trips a day, down from the 38 trips a day we were running before the shutdown. Based off of the feedback we received, we increased that to what's referred to as a 6-1-6 schedule. That's going to be 6 trips in the morning commute, 1 trip midday, and then 6 trips in the evening commute for a total of 26 trips a day. So that's fewer than what we were running before when it was 38, but it will be more trips than we're running right now during the shutdown. So that's the direction that we gave to staff to build into the budget. With regards to weekend service, that's still a little bit up in the air. We are not looking at completely cutting it just yet or committing to restore it, but kind of taking a wait and see approach, what some other transit operators are going to do, Golden Gate Ferry, on weekend service to make sure those connections are there. And we're sort of reserving the option to bring it back at a pretty short period of time when that situation comes. The other big piece of news from the SMART board is we also took the next step in becoming the freight common carrier for the North Bay, which had currently been under the NCRA through some legislation that passed through the state. There was an option for SMART to assume that common carrier of freight, and we have taken the next step to pursue that as an option, which really gives SMART full control of the line from both passenger and freight standpoint, and ensuring that freight is under public oversight and public transparency in the North Bay for years to come. So that's it from the SMART board.
Great, thank you so much. Great reports, everyone. We did the public comment, didn't we? Do we have anything more?
We don't.
Okay. All right, we're going to go down to the consent calendar. And does anyone have any questions or comments on the items on consent? There's 4 of them. No? Okay. And we haven't heard from the public on items of consent.
We have no comment from
All right,
that
so
item.
do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move that we approve the consent calendar. James Campbell.
Okay.
Great. Do I have a second?
Okay.
Know who seconded it?
Yes, I sure do.
Okay, great. All right, go ahead, read the.
All right, here we go. Commissioner Campbell,
Yes.
Commissioner Carmel,
Yes.
Commissioner Cleveland Knowles,
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert,
Yes.
Commissioner Collin,
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks,
Yes.
Commissioner Cool,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Lucan,
Yes.
Commissioner Rice,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodoni,
Yes.
Commissioner Sears,
Yes.
Chair Arnold.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. All right, we are now going to item 7 on our agenda, and this is to adopt positions on state legislative bills. And I know who's here to do it because I see him and I bet he's happy that he can do it by Zoom instead of driving down from Sacramento. Gus. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yes.
Okay.
Good to hear and see everyone, even though it's not in the flesh. I hope everyone's doing well. Gus Corey, President Corey Consulting. And even though I'm not driving down, I haven't broken my streak of wearing a tie. So for this meeting. So, but on a serious note, I had a brother and I have a brother and my brother-in-law both contracted the virus. Both are doing okay, but it definitely made the situation very real for me. And so just wanted to express my appreciation for what you're doing locally to keep your constituents safe. And I'm excited about the opportunity to work with TAM as you jumpstart your local and regional economy. Just a couple of slides. This isn't something that we typically do, but there has been a lot that's been going on in Sacramento, as you can imagine. And some of it I'm sure you've heard and touched on a couple things, as did Commissioner Connolly. So I'll try to be as succinct as possible. Just really quickly, as far as where we are in the legislative process. So the legislature was scheduled to go on its spring recess between April 2nd and April 13th. That obviously changed once Governor Newsom issued the shelter-in-place order. So the legislature was really out between about March 16th, and it's staggered between the Assembly and the Senate, where the Assembly came back to work on May 4th. The Senate's came back on May 11th. And so they're going to work here up until at least June 15th to get the state budget approved per the Constitution. And then they'll go on summer recess and come back and complete their work in August, and then session, because this is the second year of a 2-year session, they adjourn on August 31st, notwithstanding any special sessions that might be called as a result. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so COVID has caused a fiscal year deficit, actually and beyond, of $54 billion. We did have in our rainy day fund back in January $21 billion, and they were forecasting over $5 billion is what would materialize in the fiscal year. And then even since January, what the Department of Finance had estimated was $1.35 billion just between January and March that came in, which shows you how strong of a year 2019 was. But, once the shelter-in-place ordinance happened, and as you know, this is much different from 2008 when we had our last crash, which really impacted one sector. The fact that folks were still going to Disneyland in 2008 and everyone was home this time around. Unemployment has gone up, at least to date, from 3.9%, and that was true for 6 consecutive quarters, to 18% currently. And the governor, during his press conference on the May revision, had estimated that it would go up to about 24.5%. And we still don't know what the damage is because they only had data up until the middle of April, as far as those that have filed to receive unemployment benefits. Hopefully we see the light at the end of the tunnel, since we're entering phase 3 here, and we're loosening some restrictions and allowing folks to get back to doing business, and we can build some consumer confidence that way. But needless to say, just about all of the governor's proposals have been scrapped. That's $6.1 billion. They are tapping into the rainy day fund. And then there's another emergency fund of 900 million that they're looking to touch. They don't want to spend all of the money. And that's because, again, there's a $16 billion structural deficit in fiscal year 23-24, but they will spend about $16 billion of the rainy day fund over the course of the next 3 fiscal years. They're deferring CalPERS obligations. There's some net operating loss tax credit stuff that they're temporarily suspending. And then they're looking to borrow from special funds. So special funds are just, direct fees that people pay, and what qualifies there is, the gas tax goes into the special fund as well. And so the governor is relying on some additional federal stimulus to come in. There's a $1 trillion nationwide that's being requested. I know, and I'll defer to Commissioner Connolly on this because I know he's been doing a lot of work with trying to coordinate the regional efforts, but I think about 250 billion is being requested for assistance for local governments. And so we'll go to the next slide. So thankfully, the general fund is not a revenue source for transportation. We're funded wholly by special funds. It's the gas tax, the sales tax on diesel, for public transportation, the imposition of the vehicle registration fee as well. As you know, that's something that we advocated for strongly in order to secure the passage of SB1 back in 2017. Caltrans also has, and I haven't been able to get an answer as to why exactly this is the case, but they are sitting on a ton of money. There's $3.2 billion in fiscal year 1920 that still has not been expended. And that's for the SHOP program, for the STIP, for the various competitive programs as well. So while they anticipate about a $1.5 billion shortfall, we don't know how long until we fully get back into the swing of things, what the impact of the shelter-in-place ordinance is going to have. But in the short term, we'll be able to paper things over. It shouldn't impact any of the Cycle 1 projects that were funded. And I know we had some awards there through the Active Transportation Program, but it could have an impact going forward on some of the programs that we do receive funding from. And I'll get to that in just a second. As was mentioned by previous speakers, clearly there's a huge hit to public transportation. Sales tax across the board is down 27%. That's as far as what the state collects. I mean, that's regardless of what you collect through your sales tax measures as well. The ridership decline, for obvious reasons, is limiting fare box recovery. And then social distancing protocols, of course, are going to limit capacity on a bus or on light rail, for example. So you're going from 50 to 15 people maybe just to maintain the spacing. That's going to really cause major challenges for transit. On the bright side here, I've been working pretty closely with the California Transit Association. I carried legislation a couple years ago for another county in order to give them some relief from meeting fare box recovery requirements under the Transportation Development Act. So we're working with the Transit Association to make sure that there's relief, not just for TDA, but for the STA program, the State Transit Assistance Program. So these are the two main sources of funding that you receive money for operations for. And the prospects look really promising. The governor's on board and the Senate's on board. We're just waiting for sign off from the State Assembly too. And the hope is to try to get something resolved into a budget trailer bill hopefully by June 15th here. So we'll keep you posted. SB1 Cycle 2, I think as Ann had mentioned, we're going to be applying to get $40 million out of some of the competitive programs there. Congratulations on the endorsement from MTC. That's huge. We need that to make us more competitive. But we still don't know what the impact is going to be, again, because 2019 was such a robust year. The real impact of COVID is going to be felt prospectively. So it's really fiscal year 21, 22, 22-23 and 23-24, which is the 3-year duration of cycle 2. So it could have an impact, and by all means, I think our ask is reasonable compared to some of the asks that I've heard from other people. So I'm hoping for some good news to share in December. So next slide, please. So I think it goes without saying the commission's approved the guidelines for all the competitive programs and touched on the fact that applications are due. It's basically June, July, and August through the various, but the ones that we care about, it'll be by July. And I'm really proud of the fact that we advocated, successfully advocated to get the commission to include language in the guidelines to fund projects in counties with a population of less than 500,000 and to finish corridors. And thanks to the award that Sonoma received in cycle 1, I think the commission saw the wisdom in trying to complete the narrows here in cycle 2. So I think we're teed up pretty well, notwithstanding the fact that we are identified in SB1 in statute as an example corridor where investments should be made. So, fingers crossed, but it's looking promising. Next slide, please. So due to COVID and the fact that we really, there was, most of the policy committee deadlines were in April, and some of the fiscal deadlines as far as getting through appropriations. So leadership in both houses asked members if they would scale down their requests. And so we would typically provide you with a priority matrix, but 90% of those bills are gone. We're not, it's probably not worth your while at this point. So there are 2 bills though that we did want to bring to your attention that we are asking for action by the board on. So one, which is up actually on Monday in the Senate Appropriations Committee, it's the California Energy Commission. They receive funding, and the purpose is to assist with the development of, for fossil fuels. And so it's the authors trying to get them to instead convert to using resources for zero emission vehicles and zero emission fuel transportation technology. So that seems like a no-brainer as far as past precedent of where this board has been. Staff and I are recommending a support position on that one. And then as a result of the uncertainty, and this was more of the case federally with the SAFE rule, and some of you might be familiar with that. Just very brief background on that. Governor Newsom had struck a deal last September with 4 car manufacturers to improve their miles per gallon. The federal government took exception to that and said that the state was acting outside of the scope of its jurisdiction. So there's pending litigation. As a result, the state sued, and it's thrown into question the availability of federal funding. And there has been a lot of talk about doing yet another infrastructure bill. So I don't know how it's going to play into this, but one component of us receiving federal funds is to do much like what we do for the State Transportation Improvement Program. We work with Caltrans to do the same thing to receive federal funding. And so the state requires that we do it every 2 years. And so just getting rid of the reporting requirement until there's more clarity on the situation with respect to federal funds and whether or not we receive them or not. So we're recommending a support position. The bill is authored by the Committee on Transportation, so it's going to be a consent item for this Friday. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. All right, let me ask the board any questions. Yes. There's one, I think. Carmel.
Yeah, hi. I had a couple questions.
Yes.
So the 27% reduction in sales tax, is that for the upcoming fiscal year?
Yes.
It is.
For the upcoming, yes.
Oh, okay. So given that, I mean, you have a pretty dire forecast for revenue that's or funding that's gonna come into transportation, is there anything, so there's only 2 legislative bills that are going to go forward, both of which you're recommending, is there anything that's likely in the following year that that we should be thinking about now? Like what's likely to get funded under this current environment where there's not a lot of funding and money coming up?
So one thing that I failed to mention is, so it's true that sales tax does play a role, but for many of the competitive programs that we're pursuing, a lot of those are funded through the vehicle registration fee. And that's a flat fee that everybody pays. So there's some stability and predictability there. As far as our STIP goes, I would defer to staff, but we don't really receive any STIP funding right now, but in the future we would. And to the extent that Caltrans has confidence that based on the reserves that they have, that they should have resources in order to complement our application for funding of the narrows. And so I think the one thing to really look for is the governor is looking at modifying his executive order because he's trying to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And the focus is going to be, especially now that you're seeing that teleworking works and 95% of Caltrans employees have been working from home. So you're talking about 19,000 out of 20,000 employees that are working from home. So I think that will guide us. In speaking to Caltrans Director Omashakin, he said that's something to look at. And so I think we're waiting for that for some additional direction. But in the short term, I think we're going to be okay. It's an unknown. I don't think anyone really has a crystal ball that far as what the impact's going to be outside of this fiscal year, though.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? I don't see any to you. So let me bring this back to staff. Do you have anything to add or?
No, this is an action item though, where you are requesting support positions on those two bills.
Two bills.
Yeah.
This is Katie. I'm happy to move the recommendation support for these two bills, and just wanted to also thank Mr. Corey for doing such a great job for us. And I know he also works for some other folks, but great presentation. And we know that just really appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I'll
Okay,
second that.
do we have a second?
Yeah, it's Susan. I'll second.
Susan seconded. All right. We have a motion and a second. We have no public comment.
We have no public comment on that item, no.
Do the roll, please.
All right, Commissioner Campbell,
Yes.
Commissioner Carmel,
Yes.
Commissioner Cleveland Knowles,
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert,
Yes.
Commissioner Collin,
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks,
Yes.
Commissioner Cool,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Lucan,
Yes.
Commissioner Rice, Commissioner Rice.
Katie?
Yes, sorry about that.
Thank you. Commissioner Rodoni,
Yes.
Commissioner Sears,
Yes.
and Chair Arnold.
Yes.
Motion carries. 14-0.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for a great report, guys. Good
Thank you.
seeing
My
you.
pleasure. Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
You stay safe too. Okay, we are now going to go to item number 9.
8.
I'm sorry, 8. And that is to authorize agreement with Uber and enter into a MOU with Marin Transit, and this is an action item. Yes, I'm going to look to staff to make the case to do it.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair Arnold. This is Ann. I'll just say a couple words while Derek gets set up to present this item. We're very pleased to be bringing this to you today for consideration. We think that this offers a real opportunity for both partnership and innovation to support TAM's first last mile programs and offer commute alternatives. With the chair's permission, I'd also like to invite Nancy Whelan, who is here with us tonight, the general manager for Marin Transit, to say a few words about this partnership.
Great. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you very much, Chair Arnold and Commissioners. I'm very pleased to be here to say that we are very excited about our partnership with TAM on this Mobility on Demand project. Earlier this month, our board, the Marin Transit Board, approved an agreement with Uber and the MOU that you're being asked to consider tonight between the two agencies. For us, it's an exciting program to continue and, more importantly, improve the Connect program, our pilot program on mobility on demand. And specifically, it does two things that I think are so important for us, and you're going to hear Derek talk more about this, but it integrates TAM's first last mile shared ride subsidy program with Marin Transit's Connect service, and it provides real-time transit options in one app, which is going to give our users a much more seamless experience. So you'll be able to go into one app and look at all of your options there. So we're really excited about that. And then secondly, for us, it allows us to, for Marin Transit, to expand our program, and we'll be able to actually serve a 2.5-mile radius around all Marin smart stations. So it's a much bigger footprint for us and providing more options for users in those areas. And then just lastly, I'd like to thank Anne and Derek and Scott for being open to this partnership and working very flexibly throughout the whole procurement and getting this program up and running. So thank you, and I'd be happy to answer questions at the end if you need anything from me.
Thank you. All right. Any questions of Nancy? Okay, so we're going to go ahead with the PowerPoint, correct?
Yeah, Derek.
Derek.
Correct. Good evening. Good evening, virtual commissioners. I'll give a quick presentation. It's included in your packet tonight. This item's actually been heard by the TAM Executive Committee, who referred this item to the TAM Board for recommendation tonight. A little bit about the TAM program and the Marin Transit Connect program. TAM launched our Get Smart First Mile Last Mile program, which provided a $5 incentive using shared rides to and from smart stations back when SMART launched in September 2017. It's been a very good program for TAM. We've had a lot of inquiries both from academia and media regarding this program, and it's really been a very interesting program to manage over the last couple of years. Marin Transit launched their Connect service, which really provided on-demand service using wheelchair accessible vehicles and really pushing the accessibility envelope with what on-demand service can look like. So both these programs have been very good for our agencies overall. A little bit about the TAM Get Smart program. We've been averaging about 700 to 800 rides over the course of 2019. And then starting around the November, December time, we saw a dip, possibly related to the opening of the downtown Novato Smart Station and then the Larkspur Station as well for Smart. And that trend of about 500 rides continued until the COVID-19 crisis, and we're close to about 200 rides in March and April during this crisis. Back in October, Marin Transit actually released an RFP asking for software services to sort of explore what opportunities there might be to integrate services. TAM partnered during this procurement, basically providing us a contracting vehicle to enter into contract with the selected vendor. We had a very interesting procurement. That was one of the more robust processes I've been a part of, and had 15 firms that were shortlisted to 5, and ultimately Uber was selected and a notice of intent was set out. As Nancy mentioned, this was approved by the Marin Transit Board in April. The program, the way it's designed, actually does quite a few things. It integrates the TAM service with Marin Transit service, both in terms of service area, in terms of fare, and then just within a single app as well. While it integrates those programs, it actually expands the on-demand services for ADA riders and seniors and people who need wheelchair accessible vehicles. So that's two great benefits of this program. And at the same time we're doing that, it also provides a significant or reasonable cost savings to TAM and to Marin Transit. Finally, it allows TAM to pivot off of this framework to enter into individual agreements with employers to provide additional partnership opportunities to employment sites, as well as provides a framework for potential electric vehicle programs that we're exploring with Uber. Here's an overview of the proposed programs. Marin Transit Connect will use their vehicles within the Uber platform alongside a Uber pool, which is a shared ride service framework using the TAM subsidy. And then if employers also choose to enter into agreement, there's an opportunity to have a specific employer program set up. But what this really provides us is just a good framework of targeting riders to specific services, aligning the vehicle supply, the rider fares, and the geographic restrictions in as seamless as an effort as possible. The service area being considered is shown on the right-hand side. In the blue area is the shared ride services, and then the non-shared ride services are up towards Novato. And then on the left-hand side, one of the interesting changes that we're making to this program is to expand beyond the smart stations to include a wider array of transit connections throughout the service area. Ultimately, what will this look like? It's kind of shown on the right, and this is a picture from the DART service that's underway. But it's you'll see a pool option with a discounted fare if you're using the TAM subsidy. You'll see the currently available transit options on demand in your app as well. And then you'll see the Marin Transit Connect service as an individual program offering. So alongside all of these options in this carousel, which really allows riders to choose which service they would like at that time based on the cost of the services, the wait time, and then if there's any access considerations, such as a wheelchair accessible vehicle. This also allows us to really make sure that we're in alignment with the Marin Transit Connect fare structure, a key effort of this. As Nancy alluded to and mentioned briefly, the integrated real-time transit data is a pretty big offering under the Uber platform. It basically allows riders to see where the buses are coming from and the locations of those buses. So this is a big incentive or a big integration with the existing transit services already out in the service area. Additionally, there's a Make My Train feature, which is another particularly difficult challenge for first mile, last mile programs of using a shared ride. You could still guarantee arriving at your train at the correct time to catch that train. There's no deviation or potential to not miss that train using these services. So with that, I will open this up for any question. We are asking for approval of both the Uber contract on behalf of TAM, and then enter into an MOU to formalize the partnership between TAM and Marin Transit. So with that, any questions I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Derek. All right, questions on this? I know this was voted up on by the executive committee and sent to
I have a
TAM.
question. It's Susan.
Yes,
I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Very exciting and interesting, innovative program. So thank you for that. I had two questions. The first is, what is the app called and what does it look like? Is it the Uber app or is it a separate app?
This will all be housed within the Uber app, which is a pretty big selling point. There'll be no need to download a separate transit app.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I understand that there's that efficiency. I guess the only thing that I would note is I use the transit app a lot going to and from work, and Uber advertises on that, and they are always advertising how much quicker I can get somewhere if I just took an Uber as opposed to taking my bus, which is why I'm going on the transit app to begin with. So, you know, I would just caution in working with the TNCs that they not, I don't know how it can be achieved, but that they're not funneling riders actually away from transit to their rideshare services. So I've experienced that quite a bit in not using, you know, the Uber app, but the it's the same thing with their bike applications, their shared bike service. You go to rent a bike through their Jump thing, and then they tell you how great how quickly you can get somewhere in their cars. So anyway, just a note of caution, I guess, that going through their app could have some kind of unintended consequences. So maybe we can just keep an eye on that and see how that goes.
Great, it's naughty.
Second, my question, in the service map, it looks like this program doesn't go south of Larkspur, if I saw that correctly. And I was just wondering if this is kind of a pilot, and, you know, this first mile, last mile connections are also a big issue in Southern Marin. So are there plans, if this works well, to expand it, or?
So let me quickly, yes, the service area shown on this map is proposed for the initial phase of the program. Through our program prior to this, we've looked closely at the ridership numbers to Southern Marin, and they've been significantly lower than what was initially expected on the Tiburon Peninsula and Sausalito and in Mill Valley. So we're looking closely at that, at the numbers that we have. And I think that one of the considerations that we've been considering while we develop this program is to not overextend the existing Marin Transit Connect vehicles, and making sure that they can provide adequate service to the service area. So as we get into the program and understand what the service, the level of service that's being provided, I think there will be some opportunity to expand, but right now we're playing this rather conservatively to make sure that we're not overextending Marin Transit services.
Great, thank you. I would just say, you know, this first mile, last mile thing is a big issue in Sausalito, especially with our hills and a high number of seniors living here. So we have great access to transit along Bridgeway, along the water, but no transit, you know, until you get up to the highway. So getting to and from is just a big issue. And a lot of people don't take transit because of that. So I totally understand that you don't have the volume at this point, but would love to be considered for future phases. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Do we have any public comments?
We have no public comments.
Okay. All right. Well, then it looks like we're ready to take it. Anything you want to add, Ann?
No, we're
Okay.
excited to move ahead.
Okay.
Judy, you've got a commissioner who wants to speak. Commissioner Carmel.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had two questions. Number one, has Uber been involved in doing a similar program with other transit agency that we're aware of?
Yes, they've developed similar programs at a couple of locations. One of them was just shown on the screen in Des Moines, Iowa, and then there's been a couple other partnerships where transit operators are actually using their own vehicles on the Uber platform. I'll have to get back to you with a couple other case examples, but there's a handful of locations in the US that have done this.
And have you gone through and looked at and seen what has happened in those programs, the things that have gone well, the pitfalls, and learned from them?
For our program, we've been very much focused on the ride sharing and the pooling of services to and from transit centers. And we've been in discussions with the Shared Use Mobility Center and been tracking that space. I know our partners at Marin Transit have been doing a lot of due diligence through this RFP on all the vendors, including Uber, to check references and make sure this is something that has worked well for those transit operators. And so Marin Transit staff has definitely been in contact with other agencies that have worked within a similar structure.
Okay, and are they also involved in setting up whatever parameters we're going to look at to judge whether this pilot is a success or not?
indeed, we're working very closely with Marin Transit to understand the data reporting and what's needed to make sure we're able to measure success in this program.
Okay, and when is that going to be? When is the pilot going to be evaluated for success or, you know, improvement or termination?
The pilot period is for a 2-year period. You know, this would be an easier question to answer if we weren't in this COVID-19 period of knowing how long it's going to take for this service to sort of ramp up. We actually will have on-demand reporting from Uber and a dashboard to actually show rides that are occurring on a daily basis, which is a significant improvement from our current contractor that's providing an Excel spreadsheet at the end of the month, requiring a significant analysis period to sort of dive into the numbers. So there will be analysis being done on a daily basis by both Marin Transit staff and TAM. And I think, you know, a much more evaluation type report would be considered on a 6-month or perhaps quarterly sort of basis.
Great, thank you. Sounds very exciting. Thank you very much.
Okay, do you see any more? I only see 2 or 4 commissioners up because the rest is the screen.
Yeah, she's still sharing the screen.
Okay.
There, stop sharing the screen.
Okay, that's good, okay. Any hands raised? Okay. Also, I just want to remind the public to submit their comments to info, I-N-F-O, at tam.ca.gov, because we'd love to hear from you. But we don't have any public comments now, do we?
We do not, for number 8.
Okay, for number 8. All right. Any comments from the board other than what we've just had? And if not, can I hear a motion to approve the agreement with Uber and enter into an MOC with Marin Transit?
I will move.
I move it.
I'll second it. Commissioner Luke.
Okay. So I think Commissioner Fredericks made, yeah.
Yeah, we got that. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Commissioner Campbell.
Yes.
Commissioner Carmel.
Yes.
Commissioner Cleveland Knowles.
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert.
Yes.
Commissioner Collin.
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly.
Aye.
Commissioner Fredericks.
Yes.
Commissioner Hilmer.
Yes.
Commissioner Kuhl.
Yes.
Commissioner Lee.
Yes.
Commissioner Lucan.
Yes.
Commissioner Rice.
Yes.
Commissioner Rodoni.
Yes.
Commissioner Sears.
Yes.
Chair Arnold.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The motion passed. All right, we're now going to go to number 9 on the agenda, and this is a review of the proposed TAM 2020-21 annual budget and release. And the action tonight will be to release it for public comment. So, who is it, Lee?
It will be Lee,
But I'm
yep, and
calling on
she's
you.
getting set up here, so yeah, I'll just say a couple quick words. Okay. So just a brief introduction before Lee gets started. The word unprecedented is in use quite a lot these days, and we do feel that it applies to public budgeting as well. This budget has been developed over the last few months and does reflect what we think are recessionary revenue levels and commensurate expenditures. However, we are well aware that revenues could turn out to be different than what we expect, and we'll walk through the measures that we are proposing to deal with that for the coming year. We do remain optimistic about a recovery, but we are also not naive, and we know that even if we have the means to get through this coming year, the agency could be impacted for years to come, and it all depends on the economic recovery. So we'll walk you through the current proposal today, and we will also bring back any adjustments in June if more is known by then. And again, the action today is just to release the budget for a 30-day public comment period, and we will be bringing it back in June for approval. So Lee.
Thank you, Ann. Good evening, commissioners. So for the benefit of the new commissioners we have, as well as actually those of you who have been with us for a while, I want to walk through this year's budget process quickly. You know, to say the least, this is not a normal budget process we're all going through. And I'm sure you're going through the same problem, if probably a little bit worse with your local agencies over the last few months already. So TAM's normal budget process is we actually kick off the budget development discussion in-house in February. By the end of February, staff actually will work on the revenue estimate for both the sales tax as well as the vehicle registration fee, the Measure A, AA, and the Measure B revenue for the upcoming year, and bring to the TAM board's acceptance in March. So once the board approved the March revenue level, we will then use that revenue level to start the discussion with the local jurisdictions. As a funding agency, it is very important for us to start that early in the year so our local agencies, local partners can know what they can expect from us during the budget development process. So this year, obviously, we had the revenue estimate in February. We were expecting a recession. COVID-19 was starting at that time point, but we actually stayed hopeful. We assumed a 5% reduction compared to current year's revenue at that time for the upcoming year. And then we actually couldn't conduct our March board meeting. The board adopted the revenue estimate in April. And at the April board meeting, staff also reconfirmed the revenue estimate we proposed to the March executive committee meeting. And we recommend the board allow staff to move forward with the budget development process based on that revenue level. And then meanwhile, in May, we also took the budget to the Citizens Oversight Committee for review and comment. We also shared with the Marin Managers Association regarding what we have planned for them for the upcoming year. As Ann said, we are aware of what all different scenarios could play out. As Gus mentioned in his PowerPoint, the statewide reduction, sales tax reduction could be 27%. So things could be really worse. But on the other hand, just because the nature of this county, the history we had before, I'm still a little bit probably more hopeful and more on the optimist side in terms of what could play out for Marin County. Just for example, during the last recession, Santa Clara County suffered more than a 30% reduction in sales tax. Marin County was close to 15%. So, with that in mind, and we also want to share with the board, as we talked already, we have a healthy reserve that the board took action and adopted last year. And that can help us definitely smooth transition over next year. And then in terms of the future year, that's when we need to focus on. So in terms of the budget process, you will review and release the draft budget tonight for public comment. And we will come back in June at your June meeting for a detailed presentation on the actual budget work items as well as the work plans. But tonight, I just want to take a few quick minutes to really go through, as Ann said, all the unprecedented all those unusual challenges we're facing during this budget cycle. So 4 items I want to quickly walk you through. One is, the current sales tax revenue level and where next year's revenue picture, what next year's revenue picture might look like, and also the potential usage of reserve funds for the upcoming year, so we can actually allow a smooth transition of revenue and still maintain a reliable level, a steady level sales tax revenue that we can give out to the local agencies. Then also I want to cover the pending legal case against Regional Measure 3. I want to report very quickly on the city-county CMA fee level that we were able to reach an agreement with the Marin Managers Association during this very difficult time. And then lastly, I want to report to the board very quickly the measures that TAM is taking in terms of reducing and controlling our in-house operation costs. So again, in terms, review and monitoring the sales tax, as I said, we our current estimate, the 27.5 million for next year at this time point probably looks a little too rosy for too many of us. But again, I'm still hopeful. There is a chance. I still believe there's a chance we might really still be able to achieve that level of revenue. Really depends on how the reopening of economy happens, and really depends on how the new demand during this work from home months, is what those sales will help in terms of overall sales tax revenue level. So some of you probably already heard, I think the most up-to-date updates, it's San Mateo County, San Francisco, and Marin County just all announced that we are going to move to the next phase of reopening economy as of next week. So, depends on really what happens within the next 2 or 3 weeks. If things actually are under control, I think the recovery of the economy might be a quite promising picture. And also, I'm sure you have heard from various sources over the last 2 days, more and more economic institute are coming out and says that we are bottoming out in terms where we are in terms of recession. So those are the most recent development in terms of the economy, and hopefully, if that stabilizes, it's going to give us some more promising news in terms of what's going to happen within the next few months. So as I reported, we are recommending, and we are actually building this budget based on the 27.5 million sales tax for the upcoming year. But we also want to let you know, if the sales tax do come in with a 20% reduction suffering, we do have, options. The board has options to address that and to help with a smoother transaction in terms of sales tax, in terms of how we, address the sales tax shortage. And also at your June TAM board meeting, we are going to take the strategic plan update to the board. And that actually is the document for those of you, who have been with us for years, that is our long-term planning document. So that's the document, it really depends on how everything will look for the upcoming year. And if it is true, as Gus reported, and then some of us expected that we will have a 3-year reduction, that would be the process. We will have to actually look at some tough trade-off options and see what we need to do to rebalance our projects and programs. So that will happen in June. But again, we want to emphasize in terms of the upcoming year, the budget process, we are comfortable that we will be able to stay on course with all the work we planned. So just a reminder, as well as information background to our new commissioners, TAM currently has a total of $5.8 million reserve under both the Measure A, which is our old sales tax, expired in April 1st, 2019, as well as a portion of that under our Measure AA, the new renewed sales tax funding program. So on top of the 5.8 million reserve, we actually released 1.75 million already in Measure reserve to our local jurisdictions this year. And we are already the board has already approved that we're not taking additional reserve off the top for next year. So as part of the June discussion, we will also, as part of the strategic plan review, we will also bring some options, depends on where things are in terms of how we can use the remaining $5.8 million reserve to help balance and to help keep critical transportation projects and projects going, and while the recovery takes its time. So this is, at the start of this COVID-19, we were talking about 3 recovery scenarios, which is the V-shape, the U-shape, the 2 top one on the left, and then the L-shape on the bottom corner. So now with all this new, new information we have in hand, most likely, most of the economists actually is talking a recovery shape in between the V-shape and the U-shape. I think they're calling it switch shape. So which means if it is true, we are at the bottom of this recession, then it's very hopeful by the end of this year, we will be recover up to a pretty comfortable level in terms of the economy and hopefully with the sales tax revenue level as well. And then just want to share this with you very quickly. You know, those information were shared with the executive committee meeting. This is the consumer, the business confidence in terms how soon we can recover. Obviously, the longer the shelter in place lasts, the less confidence everybody will be. So I think we are heading a pretty critical time period here. So if everybody can have a pretty smooth reopening of the economy in May, in June, I think it's still pretty hopeful. We are looking at a 3 to 6 months recovery, which is taking us towards the end of this year. So that's a quick, well, not really quick, but that's a update with some positive development as I would like to report on the sales tax and the economy based on what we learned over the last few days. And then pending case on ARMS 3, I just checked what you're saying today. I think there's a court scheduled for this week, but the final decision will not come out until probably another 2 months. So just so you know, GOS reported that, you know, for the MSN, for the final segment MSN, it is very promising. We will, looks like we will be able to get the 40 million SB1 funds, but it is also very critical we get the ARMS 3 funds, which is 90 million, the majority of the funds, in order for us to have the full funding to complete the project. So we'll we really hope we'll have good news and we can amend our budget late this year. Once ARMS 3 situation resolved, we will be able to amend our budget to reflect that. So very quickly on this, you know, we're very thankful the local jurisdictions over the past 5 years allowed TAM a temporary CMA fee increase. They will give us about $559,000 per year for some very critical CMA work we were doing for the whole county. We started the discussion with the MMA early this year with the hope that we can maintain that 559 budget level and also agree to a COLA increase every year for a long-term funding plan option. But unfortunately, you know, COVID-19 happened during the middle of the discussion, and we are still very hopeful the local jurisdictions actually agreed to still give us, kind of meet us halfway. We agreed to a $500,000 fee level for the upcoming fiscal year, while everybody is actually facing a lot of various budget cuts. And we also agreed that once the COVID-19 situation works out, we will re-engage discussion and come up with a long-term fee structure for the agency. The last item I want to cover quickly under the uncertainty in terms of how we are addressing it is as we report to the executive committee meeting. So TAM does not have a union, and we also don't have a structure in terms of how the COLA works. But we're very thankful the TAM board over the last 4 years actually approved, as part of the annual budget process, approved the COLA every year for the staff's salary structure. But for this year, with what's going on, we actually initiated this discussion with staff, and we all agreed. We talked and agreed that we are not going to propose any COLA increase as this year's budget process to control our staffing cost. And then the other thing we are very exciting and actually in the process of final negotiation is our office lease situation. Our office lease will expire at the end of October. I kind of have to say this COVID-19 situation in a way helped us with the negotiation a little bit. So we have 2 good options right now. We're looking at a potential new location with about a 20% office lease reduction savings. And our current landlord actually, our discussion with them last year, and they're willing to negotiate with us as well and offered us a reduction in terms of office lease costs. So we're pretty certain that we will realize quite some office lease costs savings during this process, and we should have more information and be able to come up with come back to you with a recommendation in June. So last, just as all our local agencies are doing, we just want to make sure we explore any other potential options in terms of what we can control. the cost, travel, conference costs, and office supply. We want to really make sure we explore all those options before we get to any difficult decisions, such as, staff benefit change or work hour change. Hopefully we don't have to get to that point. So again, very quickly here, this is the structure of our budget document. We started with the executive director's message. We have a budget general overview section, and then we have the annual budget process and overview. Then we have the work plan highlights, so what work it's being highlighted for the upcoming year. So very quickly here, so this is the total revenue for the upcoming year, proposed by different funding source. Oh, sorry, did I actually? Okay. And then this is the total expenditure. As you probably noticed already, the expenditure actually is quite higher than the revenue. So I just want to, cover very quickly, as a funding agency, it is really not an alarming case when we actually spend more money than we collect, just because usually it just means we are spending down the reserve and projects speed up in terms of delivery. So just so you know, even with the 14.3 million over expenditure over the revenue, our projected revenue, project fund balance by the end of 2021 will still be about 25 million. So with that, I just want to restate tonight's action is to review and release the proposed budget for the 30-day public comment, and staff will come back in June with detailed report on the budget itself. Is that I'd like to open for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Questions? I can't see all the screen. I know. So if anyone sees a hand, oh, here. Okay, we got it.
Stop sharing. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any hands. Oh, I see you. Yes, Carmen Urban.
Hi. So thank you so much. That's very interesting, the report. So do I understand correctly that in the last recession, the sales tax revenue that TAM received went down by 15%? Is that correct?
The worst year we had was a 15% reduction.
So an equivalent reduction now would be roughly $4 million?
15% for us will be about, 30, yes, will be about 4 million.
Okay. Just for consideration, as you do your budgeting, in Mill Valley, we're forecasting a 20% reduction for next year. The state is considering 27%. Probably worthwhile forecasting through the worst, or a situation where the revenue falls by another $4 million, and the actions that the agency is going to take in order to respond under that scenario. Probably a worthwhile activity in place for the next cycle on this. And also looking for the benefit of the board, I think it's also very beneficial to look at the actions that were taken during the prior cycle and what expenses were reduced and how the agency essentially responded to a recession. Would be a useful exercise in order to understand what action should be taken this time as well.
So on that note, I do want clarify one more thing again. We are definitely looking at three different scenarios actually as of now, in terms the revenue reduction could happen for next year, and that will be bring back to the board as part of the measuring strategic plan process. So for the budget, the reasoning that staff is going to maintain using the 27.5 million as the revenue base is because the local jurisdictions actually rely on a certain level of funding from TAM for the upcoming year. And we already released that number to the local jurisdictions in a way so they don't have to cut the transportation projects programs, at least for the upcoming year, by giving them a more stable revenue source. And then if revenue does come in much lower, as I mentioned, we will use the reserve funds to bridge the gap for this upcoming budget year. But we are definitely looking at least 3 different scenarios. The worst scenario, we're looking at probably a total 3-year reduction up to 30%. Basically, it's a huge readjustment of the total revenue available for the whole Measure A sales tax program, and that would be brought back to your discussion for discussion as part of the strategic plan process. And then a lot of discussion, a lot of trade-off options discussion will have to happen at that time point.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Rice.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. I have a follow-up to that. So I too am concerned that I think the rosy scenario is, I'm glad we're planning for some different scenarios. I actually am concerned about this year as well. And I understand the passing through to the cities and towns, their share. You didn't speak to what's happening with regards to Marin Transit. So it sounds like we're keeping the local partner share whole, but how are we committed to keeping then the Marin Transit share of the Measure A sales tax whole?
So Marin Transit definitely, it's, our discussion, we had extensive discussion with Marin Transit staff during this whole process, which is one of the reasons we decided to maintain our revenue level, just because if we cut our revenue level, it has direct impact on the budget for the upcoming year. So our discussion with Marin Transit, as I said, we are maintaining the revenue level as it is right now. So they are getting the fair share. And Marin Transit, I think Nancy can confirm this, but for the upcoming year, they're in the same situation like us. If it's, for the upcoming year, with all the help, with the steady funding source we were able to provide, they will be okay. And with the federal support, they will be okay. But really, it's the long term. We all have to, we're all kind of worried about, and also have to take a really hard look if things doesn't get back on track soon.
Right. So that leads me to the just a little bit more understanding the reserves, what we have in place, what we will have left over after for next fiscal in our reserves in order to help with smoothing. And then also, if you could remind me about our reserve policy.
So let me address the first question. So in terms of reserve, as I mentioned, we already gave out 1.75 million. So that helps with the current year revenue level a little bit. And then our reserve policy, the policy we adopted last year is we are taking 5% off the top of the Measure A sales tax, Measure AA, the new program, every year for the first 5 years. And then at the end of each year, we will actually release the same amount on a 1-to-1 ratio. We will release that amount we collect out of Measure AA. We will release what's under Measure A. So just to clarify, when we finished the Measure A program, we had a total of $5.8 million reserve in the Measure A program. But because of those two are under 2 separate expenditure plans, we have to treat them separately.
Right.
So yeah, so what the board decided, during last year's discussion is by the end, we're going to maintain that minimum 5.8 million for the 5-year period. And then we're going to release the old Measure A reserve on that 1-on-1 ratio based on what we collect under Measure A. So as I mentioned, right now, even after the release of the 1.75 million, we still have $5.8 million in the reserve.
So we will come out of fiscal year 2021, if we adopt this budget, with 5.8 million in reserve.
1920, not 2021. I do want to clarify that. 2021, again, it really depends on the final FY 2021 revenue level collection. If we had the worst year we ever had, we had a $4 million revenue reduction, and the board decides to use that $4 million to bridge the gap, we will come out 2021 with 1.8 million. But if we actually had a minor, revenue reset, we lost about 1 million, and that means we only need to use 1 million to bridge that gap.
Okay, so basically we're looking at that reserve is going to be what we're going to fall back on if the sales tax revenue don't come in, if we don't recover, basically. If we have, and it looks like we'll only have enough really to help bridge for 1 year unless we use it as a glide path over a couple.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have for right now.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
So following up on that conversation, it would actually be very helpful for me to have more information about planning forward, because certainly for us at the county, we have an analysis of what this year one will look like, and then the subsequent years are actually quite different and they're worse. And so I would feel more comfortable if we didn't just say we've got 5.8 million to get through the next year and we'll see where we are, but that we actually were running some scenarios for year 2 and year 3, because I think I don't believe we're going to bounce back that fast, and I think we really need to do some serious thinking about how we get through the second year, at the very least, as we're thinking about the first year. So let's think forward a little bit and have some additional information.
Yes, as part of your executive committee meeting, we will be bringing the strategic plan with the scenarios, with the look of the next, at least the next 5 years for your initial review.
But Lee, I'm sorry, this to me is not about the strategic plan. Obviously, the strategic plan is important, and what we do in the strategic plan is driven by how much money we have. And so it's going to be hard for me just to have a conversation about the strategic plan unless I have some budget numbers and the best guesses we have about what happens in year 2 and year 3 in various scenarios. Perhaps that's what you're saying and I'm not understanding it correctly.
Oh, I think that's what I'm trying to refer to. Yes, for us, just because of nature, we're the funding agency, and the most important funding we have is the Measure A sales tax. And as you know, our other funding sources are still pretty stable. The vehicle registration fee, as Gus reported, it's a stable funding source. And now our CMA funding planning fee with MTC, it's pretty stable. That's a 5-year funding agreement. So this is really the most important and the only big unknown we have to address. So in a way, the strategic plan, it is our budget in that sense, in terms of how we're planning for the future. It's probably similar to Marin Transit. The annual budget is for the annual process, and the short range transit plan is the long-term planning document. It's similar in that case for us.
Well, that's not exactly how we do budget forecasting at the county, and that's why I'm trying to kind of find a middle ground. We will look forward by 5 years. We do 2-year budgets. Any budget decision we're making on an annual basis is in a context of a longer time frame. So that's where I'm having trouble just saying we'll do it through the planning process. But thanks.
And through the chair, if I could just circle back on that. I guess my discomfort is very much the same, and I feel like we're not using this year's budget planning to actually help us make it through the following couple years, which could very well be maybe not horrible, but certainly maybe not at the revenue levels and the sales tax revenues we were seeing pre-COVID. And I'm just wondering why we're not using that. We can't use this year's budget a little bit more to help, even as we look out 2 and 3 years.
Okay. Commissioner Colbert.
Yeah, I don't want to pile on, but I'm really sympathetic to Kate's last comment. At the last meeting, I just somehow feel, I understand that we're a funding agency and we're different than localities, but I just want to make sure that as we're making decisions at a body, we're sort of getting ahead of the really hard choices that we have to make in a way that's understandable to us, and we're able to communicate to the community. I mean, I think they really want to understand that, we're taking a long view of what a lot of people are considering to be a really difficult economic time. Because if that turns out to be the case, then we need to be ahead of this to communicate to them how we're going to have to sort of either scale back or, have conversations about difficult choices. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner, Cleveland knows. Hello, Susan.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I would like to add on to this. I think and agree with the comments made by Commissioners Rice and Sears and Colbert. And also, I think we also need to really be thinking about our partners like Marin Transit, because it's not just about our revenue through sales tax, but their revenue is going to be potentially significantly affected by the fact that not only, you know, do we have the direct impacts from COVID, but there's going to be a significant kind of fear about getting back on crowded public transportation. So their revenue may also be falling, you know, to some extent over a longer period of time as we work through getting people back on public transit. And so, you know, I would, in this longer term kind of planning, also like to hear more from Marin Transit about how they see, you know, we've got the CARES Act funding for Marin Transit now, which is great, but that will be probably just the first 2 tranches, and then that will only get us so far. So I'd just like to add to that, that I think that's an important part of the picture that we need to look at if we're going to need to also be augmenting funding there.
Thank you, Susan. Commissioner Lee, did we see a hand?
Yeah, so forgive me, I'm the freshman commissioner, and I just got my new manual that talks about what my duties are. And I was looking at the executive summary of what the board is, and it says the main highlighted thing is reduce congestion, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, maintain and improve local transportation infrastructure, provide high quality transportation options for people of all ages who live, work, and travel in Marin County, right? We're talking about a funding agency that ultimately funds programs in the immediate needs of the area, right? And so therefore, in the past, if there was a sales tax or some kind of depression that took away funding, it usually didn't affect the transportation needs of the community, right? So when I hear someone say, well, what happens 2 or 3 years from now? Well, if our sales tax and our ability as a culture to basically adapt to COVID is affected, and we have severe like reductions in that, we're also going to see reductions in transportation or rethinking of transportation needs overall. And so it means more than just a budget discussion. It's an overall discussion of what is transportation, what are our transportation needs in this longer term recovery if we're faced with it. And I guess my question is that the right thinking? Is that, you know, as a freshman, you know, like not being part of this board up until this point, is that a valid understanding of it? Or, you know, is it that I'm missing something about that correlation that's never existed in previous kind of, as to Urban's point, you know, previous kind of downturns was, you know, I mean, if Twitter and Square are never going to put people in cars to come to the office again, are we going to see reduced traffic forever? And so therefore we can reprioritize the budget to meet the needs of the local community in different ways than we had previously thought. So those are my questions to, you know, the board and to everybody to consider with that, and not look at it as a detriment, but, you know, look at the brief of what this funding mechanism is, and that in some ways we're closer to succeeding in the mission than ever before, and it took no money at all. So that's my question statement.
So I guess on that note, if I may, Chair, I do, you know, definitely, I want to emphasize again, as a funding agency, our budget process probably is a little different than the normal budget process of many of the local jurisdictions. And what Commissioner Lee just said is, in terms of reevaluation of the program project priority, you know, this is what staff will bring back to you in June. I guess I'm missing a month here. In June, during the strategic plan process. I know that's not exactly the budget process, but that's a process we would lay out the revenue scenarios for the upcoming few years. You know, the expenditure plan will have all 30 years, but of course we know, as for any long-term planning, you really only focus on the first 5 years of a 30-year plan. So on those first 5 years, depends on the different scenarios, we will actually have to look at our crossing guard program. You know, we just increased our crossing guard level to close to 100, actually more than 100 guards. Can we sustain that if the if the revenue scenario is the worst case. And then also for some of the, then also for the local streets projects, for the Safe Routes to School projects, if the sales tax revenue reduce a total 30% over the next 3 years, we will not be able to fund all the projects we made commitment to. So that is the hard discussion we will have to engage and have to make some really tough decisions based on what scenarios the board think is most comfortable moving forward, and then we will have to do some adjustment. Again, I want to emphasize, as Ann said during her opening comments, we're not naive. We know things could get a lot worse, but what we're really trying to do is, as a funding agency who don't have operations, like your local agency has, who has a little bit more options, we just want to help Marin Transit, help the local jurisdictions at least maintain a relative stable revenue level for them for the next upcoming year. So at least they have some revenue, they have the stable revenue source from us. They can maintain those programs and projects. And then that basically gave us all time to kind of, prepare and react to what could happen over the next few months. And then, to me, the most difficult part of this budget process is not like we're facing a reduction. It's really things still could play out many different ways. Again, as I said, I think there's still hope it might play out not too bad. And then that, maybe this 1 year will be enough, but it could be very worse. But then during the upcoming discussion we will have in terms of looking at all the different programs in June, we will get ourselves prepared as well for the worst case scenario.
Okay, thank you, Lee, and thank you everyone who had
Wait,
comments.
I have one more comment, Judy.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Charles, I thought your question was great. I thought it really sort of went to the essence about what we're trying to wrestle with. And so I look forward to, your continued input. I mean, human behavior is completely uncertain, and this is what TAM should be wrestling out. And that's the kind of deep philosophical inquiry that we should be curious about, that informs the budgetary decisions. And where we put the money defines how we will be, responding to our stakeholders. So thank you.
Okay.
But just
also,
here, oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
Are you making a comment or a
Yeah,
motion?
I just want to remind our new board member too that the Measure A was very specific also where the funding has to go, proportionally the sales tax funding, and Marin Transit is, I guess my concern is that for those programs that receive funding or those folks who get a slice of Measure A, is they're having to plan forward, and whatever we do with our budget does impact their budgeting as well and thinking forward. But it's not just congestion management. Measure A also has some dedicated funding recipients for programs that they run that are related often to congestion management and congestion relief, but we don't have total control over that as well.
Okay.
So I just would like to add, I don't know that I was targeting anything as much as just asking kind of a new freshman existential question about how I should think about any kind of consideration, and then also, what agencies are dependent and where you can't, where I should start thinking about, future considerations and where we benefit the most with the dollars that we will have.
Right. All the comments have been much appreciated, and I noticed, and you have to recognize there are different questions and different ways of thinking. Is the first ever that we have done this because of the COVID virus, and every organization is having to do this, and so we will too. And I think that it's going to be interesting when we see the budget printed out and we're ready to vote on it. So right now, I want to know if you're ready to vote to send it to release it for 30 days.
Madam Chair, we have public comment.
Oh, we have public comment. Great. Okay, okay.
Okay, this public comment is being submitted jointly by the following people, and forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong. It is being submitted by David Mahler of Larkspur, the Climate Reality Project Bay Area chapter, by Kiki Laporta of Fairfax, Sustainable Marin, William Carney, San Rafael, Sustainable San Rafael, David Fox, San Anselmo, Sustainable San Anselmo, Marilyn Price, Mill Valley, Sustainable Mill Valley. Dear TAM Board of Commissioners, at TAM's February 27th, 2020 board meeting, several Marin residents provided public comment in support of Measure B, Element 3.3, Alternative Fuels Vehicle Program. These comments focused on the importance of TAM promoting alternative fuels and clean transportation, the significance of TAM's budget for this work as the only dedicated clean transportation funding in Marin County, and how TAM perennially underspends the approved Element 3.3 annual budget, currently at $345,000. One of the public speakers, David Mahler of Larkspur, representing the Climate Reality Project Bay Area chapter, encouraged the board to take the following 3 actions to ensure that TAM's budget for Element 3.3 is effectively and fully utilized. 3 bullet points. Identify the highest impact focus areas for the Alternative Fuels Program. Establish clear goals with metrics for each focus area. And identify and implement key projects for each focus area. Mr. Mahler also requested regular public updates on TAM's activities to implement Element 3.3 and handed TAM's executive director a list of 9 recommended high-impact clean transportation projects identified by a coalition of citizen groups for TAM's Alternative Fuels Program for distribution to TAM staff and board. List of projects is attached. As part of the board's budget discussion, we would like to hear an update on 1, Measure B, Element 3.3, 2, the board's response to the list of recommended clean transportation projects Mr. Mahler provided on February 27th, 3, the actions the board is taking to ensure the funds budgeted for Element 3.3 in TAM's proposed FY 2020-21 annual budget will be fully spent, and that Element 3.3 funds not spent in previous years are rolled over to the next year and reserved for spending on Element 3.3 programs as staff has indicated. And number 4, the board's plan to update the 2010 Measure B expenditure plan that expires this year. And they say they submit this respectfully, and the 5 people named.
Great, okay. Thank you very much, and we will address that down. So thank you for sending that. And those are all the public comments, correct?
Let me just one last check.
Okay.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, so do I have a motion to send a budget out for 30 days?
So moved, Alice.
Alice, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Beach, all right. All right.
Here we go. Commissioner Campbell.
Yes.
Commissioner Carmel.
Yeah.
Commissioner Cleveland Knowles.
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert.
Yes.
Commissioner Collin.
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly.
Aye.
Commissioner Fredericks.
Yes.
Commissioner Hilmer.
Yes.
Commissioner Kuhl.
Yes.
Commissioner Lee.
Yes.
Commissioner Lucan.
Yes.
Commissioner Rice.
Yes.
Commissioner Rodoni.
Yes.
Commissioner Sears.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right.
15-0.
Thank you very much. That passed. And we've come to the end of the meeting, so we are going to adjourn, and I want to thank everyone for coming, for participating this way, and please be careful, wear masks, practice social distancing, and so that we all see you again next month. We're adjourned.
Great, thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.